Come on, here you go. Good morning, or whatever the time of the day is for you. My name is Kurt, and this is my daily good life meditation video with dog, all snuggled in. There we go. This is an exercise that I do every day, and today is January 21st, 2023. I do this in order to remember my life objectives and principles, to see how I did applying those to the challenges of yesterday, and to plan for the coming day. Let's begin with last night and yesterday. Slept very well last night. I was to bed around before 9, well before 9, and slept right until the alarm went off at 4 a.m. So I don't even remember waking up once. That's a first in a long time. Wow. As for work yesterday, it was a really good day of work. It was a Friday on, which means light meetings, light activity, and I was able to capitalize on that and catch up on all kinds of stuff. It was a really productive day. I went to the beach, did my swim and run, and had a nice walk with my wife and the dogs at lunchtime. In the evening, though, I wasn't feeling so good. It was just kind of worn out and tired. That's why I went to bed well before 9. And feeling moody last night, and I don't like it when I get moody. So, but I did better. Instead of engaging when I'm moody, which I've done in the past, which isn't the best, because then you end up, spreading the moodiness around. Instead of that, I just kind of quieted up, took care of the last few things of the evening, cleaned up, shower, and got to bed. And I'm glad that I kind of kept it to myself, because it passes like a tide. It was a low tide yesterday is what it was, and it was a really low tide at the beach when I was swimming and running. Low tide. I wonder if I can work that in somehow. I wonder if others experience these tide-like shifts in mood. It's not very frequent anymore. It used to happen more often when I was younger. Now it goes months at a time before I experience it again, which is good, because I don't like to be so indeterminate around my loved ones. So that was the day yesterday. I'd say that was a good thing, because I can't control the mood necessarily, although I tried, but I can't control my reaction to it, right? That's within my reach. So I would then call that a success, if I may. All right, let's do the good life. My 7 objectives are as follows. Number 1 is to be always ready to die, to have my life situation in order and my relationships good and my life's work sound. And they are. Number 2 is to make good and effective use of my time, to not waste my opportunities and days, but to move as expediently as possible through every opportunity. Number 3 is to develop and maintain good and sound life principles and objectives, which is precisely what I do by way of this exercise that I'm doing now, the recitation of the Good Life Creed. Well, it's more than a recitation. I work on it, I tinker with it as I go, and it grows and changes, adjusts. Principles and objectives move around, become refined. Sub-principles are added, moved around, and new things come along. So far, I don't think anything's actually been wholesale removed. I have removed some principles to become sub-principles of other things, but that's as close as that. It seems like once something makes it in, it's there for good. The next objective is to cultivate good emotional reactions, to become someone that reacts well to the fluctuations and vicissitudes of my inner feelings, just as I did yesterday. I'm starting to see that yesterday was a really good day in that capacity, because I just couldn't help that I was feeling out of sorts, a little bit down in the evening. And I just waited it through. And I didn't engage anybody or spread it around. Went to bed, and it did pass with the night. Next is to perform good actions, just to do good things throughout the day. Yesterday I was picking more trash off the beach. And then next is to recognize my true limits and my true opportunities, to see what I can and cannot reach. And then lastly, my last objective is to do just one thing at a time, and do that thing slowly and deliberately and carefully, just like I'm doing right now. This isn't natural. This is deliberate. I work at this so that I can speak in a clear, measured tones, enunciating every word and forming sentences that are crisp and clear and convey the meaning that I seek to unfold. All right, those are my 7 objectives. Now to my 34 principles. But let me get a sip first. That's a very loud, vociferous sip. My first principle is war. To always want to be fighting against propositions of truth, especially the things that I've already onboarded and believe are true. Because I want to be disabused of these things if they turn out that they're actually false, and I need to keep up a campaign of examination to learn if that's true. My second principle is reason, which is the tool and instrument that I use in the aforementioned war. And there are 3 sub-principles here: honesty, objectivity, doubt. Did I say 3? I meant 4. And humiliation. I want to be an honest man with myself and others, objective in my view, looking at things from as many sides as possible and as closely as possible, and a fierce skeptic, always questioning, and then ready and eager even to accept the humiliation of discovering that a cherished belief is in fact wrong. What a blessing it would be to discover that. The next principle is called the homunculus. It's my substitute for a soul because I don't think I have one. But it does seem I do have a consciousness, and I labeled that the homunculus. The next principle is called the home of good and evil, which is the place where the homunculus resides. I picture it as a rock sticking out of a sea, where my consciousness stands with a death swirling about, the waves splashing and crashing, the rain coming down and the sun beating upon me in clear days, tempestuous days, one upon another. And one day I'll fall or slip, and into the sea I go, and that's the end of me. Each of us stands on our own precarious rock in this giant vast sea, waving and yelling at one another, to one another across the waves. That's as close as we get. We're all alone, and we're all going to die alone, insofar as that we go down into the sea alone, and then that's the end of us. It's not a very pleasant image, but it's a good reminder that it's only up to me to live well and make life good. Where good is not just a general term, it refers to something very specific, virtue, namely. Where virtue is not a general term, it refers to something very specific, namely the effort that we make to improve the well-being of thinking creatures that can enjoy pain and suffering. Well, maybe enjoy isn't the right word. Can experience these things. I want to improve the well-being, to reduce the suffering and increase the happiness. Not at the expense of others, but again, along the lines of virtue. Next comes the home of good and evil. The home of right and wrong and good and evil is in here, in our opinions, in our minds. It doesn't exist elsewhere. Next comes purpose. I have 3 purpose in my life. These are: 1, to be a good husband and father; 2, to be a virtuous human being, seeking and working after the improvement of the well-being of thinking creatures; 3, to share my own personal story and the Good Life Creed that I've developed by way of my book, Going Alone. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any bookstore you might go to. Just order it. You can ask for it there. They'll get it. If they don't have it, they probably don't. You can get it on my website as well, goingalone.org. Although not right now. I've taken it offline because I'm a little behind on shipments. I'll make it available again after I get caught up and after I get back from Japan. All right. Next is the atomic principle. Everything is made of bits and pieces, flowing and falling to pieces, just like you and me. And then the principle of nature. Everything and everyone has some particular nature, and it's good to recognize what that is so that we can live in accord with it and abide how we really are. Like it is my nature to periodically have a bad afternoon or a bad morning, like I did last night. I just didn't feel it. It's my nature to do that. I do that. Now, since I recognize that that's my nature, and since I also abide another principle of mine called the Feast of Offal, which is that I don't want to spread my bad days on others, I just kind of clam up and be quiet and just move through the necessary things, and then get to bed as quickly as possible because it'll pass. It'll be a better day tomorrow, usually. And if it's not a better day tomorrow, then I'll keep it inside through that day too, until it is either no longer a bad day or I am no longer someone who's suffering good or bad days. Next comes the principle of the pirate ride. My suggestion that free will is an illusion. We're not free. We are in sync and tune, lockstep with the universe around us, which is nudging and pushing us like a styrofoam cup bobbing around on the sea with the wind blowing and the waves and the current. That's us. The cup has little say in anything, although we do have this feigned consciousness of ours, which gives us the impression that we have some will. But I think that that's a seeming illusion. If there is any, it's very small, and I don't think it's anything at all. Which is, if you believe this, a profound and deep thing to believe. It could at once liberate us of responsibility, but I choose instead to simply see it as that I'm not I can't seem to stop thinking that I have acting. I can't seem to stop behaving as though I have free will, even though I don't believe I do. But the combination of those two kind of liberates me of the feeling like I own all the responsibility. I still take all the responsibility, but in the deep inside, I don't feel I necessarily own it all, because the universe is doing all of its stuff too, unmindfully, unwillfully, unguided, other than through the simple laws of the laws of nature. It's a vast and complex idea that I'm still working to untangle. I hold it tentatively, as I do with all my principles and objectives. Next comes the principle of maturity, and the sub-principle of wisdom, fortitude, and integrity. Maturity is the state that we arrive at when we have the wisdom of our past failures and success, and the will and fortitude to do better. We can then enjoy the integrity of a life lived in alignment with our best principles. Next comes the social principle. We are social creatures. We need each other. And our best ends are social ends. The sub-principles here are diplomacy, the effort that we make to work with one another. Justice, the end that we seek together to create the better city. And conspiracy, linking arms to work together to build that aforementioned better place. Next comes the principle of family. I highly recommend, after our initial great life adventure is complete, and I'll get to that in a minute, that we endeavor to form and cultivate and nurture a family of our own. And it doesn't need to be the traditional type of family. It can be any type of family you want. It's a community of people. Next comes the principle called public speaking, a recommendation towards good communication, cultivating the ability to speak well, write well, and, very importantly, listen well, listen carefully. The sub-principles here are best words, cultivating a rich vocabulary to use, well, eloquence, a characteristic of our communication that comes of practice and modeling. Prudence, the ability to filter our meaning through our values, and felicity, the ability to filter our meaning through our emotions, to season it with ease. And then lastly, the two negatives, these are the things to avoid, which is the spreading of rumor and the engagement in gossip. Next comes a principle called temperance, the ability to control our consumption of all things in life, our work, our play, our time, how we use our time in every capacity. Life will not go well. That's the next principle. And it won't. It's going to have rough patches. Like last night. I had a rough patch last night. Expect them. Be ready for them. Mitigate them as best we can. The next principle is the horror show. It's an extension of life will not go well to the nth degree, when what goes badly becomes horror. True, honest to goodness horror. Freddy Krueger level stuff going on all around us, in our lives, to those people we love, to the strangers that walk amongst us, and ultimately to ourselves as well. Maybe beginning today. The horror may arrive today. There's not much I can do to mitigate that other than live well. And prepare myself to bear it. And to bear the witness of others who are experiencing it. Excuse me. Next comes that which must be borne, carried, B-O-R-N-E. What we have to bear in life is the tough stuff, the bad days, the horror. Next comes the Feast of Offal. It's what happens when we spill out our upset onto the world. Like last night, I was having a bad evening. Instead of just kind of shutting my mouth and moving through my last few activities of the day, and you can bet my wife knew that what was going on. She's well attuned to my moods. But instead of engaging that and saying something that I would later regret, I just kind of clammed up and finished off the day and went to bed. And today I'll apologize for my moodiness and explain to her that I was just having a moment. That's avoiding the Feast of Offal. The Feast of Offal, engaged, would have been if I had elected to spew out some nonsense in front of my wife, to spill my emotions out into the form and venue between us and contaminate or hurt her in the process. I don't do that. I used to do that. Don't do it. Unfortunately, these moments don't come very often. Like I said, they are months apart, if sometimes even half a year or a year apart. Seems I can't remember the last time this happened, actually. And it's nothing terrible. It's just me kind of having an off day. But it used to be bad, because it used to be that back in my 20s and 30s, I would feel like I had to immediately call to arms my mind to riot against these feelings and bring myself out of it, to expunge it, and to maybe exorcise whatever demon seemed to be haunting me at that moment through aggressive ends. And my wife would have to witness me doing that. Now, she doesn't get these moods, so maybe she doesn't relate. A lot of people don't. Unfortunately, like I said, they're very few and infrequent and far between now. They only emerge as seemingly a bad evening. And I can manage that. I'm looking forward to even getting even more under control in the future. Anyway, that's my experience of the Feast of Offal when I'm having a bad day. And I let everybody know about it, which I don't do anymore. The other side of the Feast of Offal is when others are having a bad day. And if I choose to consume that, like a voyeur watching someone else suffer, that's not good either. It contaminates us, and it renders us unable to be helpful. Instead, I'll sit quietly by, my mouth shut, let them vent, and when they're done, offer them a tissue and a shoulder to cry on if they need it, and be a human being offering connection. Next comes the best seat in the house, to try to be all right with who I am and where I am and what I'm doing at all times, all the while striving to improve. Next comes distraction, which is what we do when we don't want to engage in the deeper questions of life. And we distract ourselves with all the stuff in our life, our striving for education, our careers, our home, our family, our sports, our hobbies, our religion, and our God. And if we're really good at it, we don't have to see the next principle, the great indifference, the deep emptiness of a universe without God. We distract ourselves so that we don't have to witness that, because it's a very difficult thing to see. And it leaves us with holding the bag of responsibility to make life good, which is more weight than many wish to carry, including me at times. But I think I've largely gotten over that. I just do it. What do I feel like I'm about to miss one? All of these principles and objectives are in the book, in a chapter called The Good Life. So if I feel like I'm going astray, I can look it up. Public speaking, temperance, life will not go well, life is born, distraction. There it is. Okay, I was okay. See there. All listed out there. The heading for the principle or objective, and then a description. And sometimes I put little bits of poetry in there too. The next one is The Restless Man. And as long as I'm there is a poem there by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Let's read it. Traveling is a fool's paradise. We owe to our first journeys the discovery that place is nothing. At home I dream that at Naples, at Rome, I can be intoxicated with beauty and lose my sadness. I pack my trunk, embrace my friends, embark on the sea, and at last wake up in Naples, and there, beside me, is the stern fact, the sad self, unrelenting, identical, that I fled from. I seek the Vatican and the palaces. I affect to be intoxicated with sights and suggestions, but I am not intoxicated. My giant goes with me wherever I go. Ralph Waldo Emerson. I added that poem at the beginning of the principle called The Restless Man as a caution to what not to expect to find when we heed that restlessness. And the restlessness, as you can probably guess, is simply that feeling that we have in our teens to early 20s. It tends to begin at that time that we want to go out and explore the world. If you are someone that's feeling that feeling at those age, then I highly recommend doing it, because it tends to not go away. It haunts us all of our lives, especially if we don't do anything about it. And to do something about it means to step upon the next principle, which is the path of wildness, which is the way forward out of the stable life that we've created, or at least the familiar life that it is, into something new, headed for the next principle, the realization of a great life adventure, which is the treasure, the prize of having been upon the path of wildness. The next principle is the risk of avoiding risk. What happens if we don't step upon the path at a young age? Well, like I said, it's going to haunt you probably for the rest of your life, and you get more incessant. It's going to be relentless, especially as we get older, and you'll wind up like Ebenezer Scrooge, haunted by the wishes of the past, and ghosts of the past, so to speak. The best way to assuage that risk is to do something about it at a young age, but you can do it also later, but it has less effect later, but you can still do it all your life. It's better when it's young. You get a deeper, more richer experience. You can also do it in bits and pieces. That's the way I did it, eking out little bits of adventure every other weekend on a Sunday. That's how I did it. Likewise, there's risk in doing too much adventure, in which case we may not make good use of the opportunity to create a family and a home of our own, to develop security, get an education, and get a good career, and save for our old age so we don't have to work till the end. It's a tricky, difficult thing to tread a life that's a balance between those two extremes. Next comes sin and damnation. There are 8 sins in my worldview, and broadly speaking, these relate to being dishonest, or believing things for bad reasons, or spreading rumors, or engaging in gossip. These lead to damnation of a sort, where we're damned in the here and now for by virtue of our poor living. To enumerate the believing things for bad reason, there are several of these categories of this, or general specifications. These are credulity, believing things too readily; faith, believing things where the belief itself is the foundation of the belief, which is nonsense; superstition, another form of nonsense; dogma, believing things based on tradition or a big book or institutions; authority, believing things based on being impressed by the charisma, the speech-making capabilities, or the appearance of some authority figure. Any of those things, believing things by virtue of any of those reasons is not a very good reason to believe. And we invite the sin of winding up believing things for bad reason and following a path that may be untrue. Again, the consequence of these things is damnation in the here and now. The next principle is complete oblivion. After death, there's nothing to follow. I don't think we have a soul. I don't think there's any God. I don't think there's any afterlife or forever for any of us. So when we're dead, we won't have a chance to reunite ever with our loved ones. And if we can't reunite with our loved ones, there'll be no chance to reconcile differences. And there'll certainly be no chance to apply justice in any afterlife that doesn't exist by virtue of any justice giver that doesn't exist either. So it's better to seek after these things in the here and now: connection, reconciliation, and the participation in the creation of a just state. Do it while we have a chance, while we're alive. It's the only chance we get. Next comes script writing, the newest principle of all. Script writing is a tool that I use to plan out my minutes, hours, and days ahead by literally forecasting and playing in my mind how I want things to play out, and it works. I use it ahead of meetings at work. I use it just in the shower, just as I was preparing to come out here and start doing this. I was planning out how I was going to do this carefully, deliberately, not rushing it, being very applied to every moment that I was spending in front of the camera just now. I can't believe the way that it works. Just the smallest bit of script writing towards any ambition that I'm taking on, and I can do better. I tried to use script writing to pull myself out of my moodiness last night. It didn't work. It was a deeper well than I could reach, but I'm working on it. Then comes the next principle called the bullseye aim. A reminder that I'll shoot for the bullseye target, but I should expect not to hit the target, but to just be happy with that I get in the general area, and be pleasantly surprised and delighted if I make it, not to be upset if I don't hit the bullseye. Usually I have it backwards. The uphill climb is the next principle. Today I'll climb a little higher up the mountain of life, a mountain that really goes nowhere, but it offers a beautiful view the higher the vista, the higher we climb. And I'll finish the day higher today, I will. Arena and utility is next. Life is an arena for the development of objectives and principles that we can use towards our better ends. Nothing is enough is the second to last principle. A gentle suggestion towards simplicity. I just feel a wave come over me. Simplicity. I love it. And And that brings us to the last principle, the principle of fun, my favorite. A principle that reminds me to enjoy today, the reflection and remembrance of yesterday, and the anticipation and preparation for tomorrow and forecasting of what tomorrow will be like. In the end, having a little happiness and fun that doesn't cost anyone else in terms of virtue is probably the best that we can hope for in this short existence that we enjoy. That's it. That's my Good Life Creed. 7 objectives and 34 principles laid out in the order in which they facilitate my best remembrance and application towards the coming day. And with regard to that coming day, what will I do today? Well, as soon as I finish this, I'll upload it, type it up. I'll read my Bible. I'll feed the dogs and walk the dogs. I'll then fire up the computer and I'll update my journal. Every Saturday, Saturday morning, every Saturday I write in my journal every day. I take all my journal entries from the last 6 days, and I update them into, well, it's been 7 days, into my formal journal, which is more like a book. And then it's called Stoic Poetry, and it has a whole series of journals laid out like books. So I'll do that, and then I'll hopefully then it'll be just about time to head off to go to the beach to do my book reading. What am I going to read today? Which chapter? I go to the Sand there on 17th Street, at the end of 17th Street, and I do a book reading every Saturday morning. Today, last time I read Stoic Poetry. Oh, I'm going to read The Good Life, the very chapter that deals with these principles and objectives. So I guess I'll do this again. And then from there I'll come home, clean the house. Yumiko and I will go out and do our shopping. And I'm hoping to have a fashion show with my wife. Maybe we'll order pizza or something like that and come home and have clothes, and we'll find a place to stay and plan our trip. It's going to be fun. And then I'll have a nice evening with my wife and our dogs. We'll go for good dog walks and lunchtime in the evening, etc. And it'll be a good day. Script writing, right? Planning it all out. Hopefully I'll do a book reading tonight too. I mean a book signing. And that's it. That's my Good Life for today. And with that, I wish you all the best. And now my life is done, if not finished. Take care. Be safe, but not too safe.